As we come on the air in a state of mask confusion.
The CDC has asked the Department of
produce, I thought it was higher. Our drinks, they're higher.
The cost of cooking climbing faster than the cost of eating out.
I think it tells us that the pricing when we're eating out is likely to go higher.
This morning, how restaurants
Making that formal appeal to reinstate the mask mandate this morning, just minutes really after the CDC made the same request. The CDC is issuing a statement insisting the mandate remains necessary, writing the CDC's action to dropping them after Monday's ruling. One pandemic policy that is not changing, the FAA announcing it will be keeping its zero-tolerance policy for unruly passengers with or without a mask mandate.
Mask mandate on public transportation did spark some renewed debate over liberty, politics, and public health. The National Desk's chief political correspondent, Scott Fuhrman, takes a look at both sides of the argument.
Thank you, guys. So it would depend on what state law said in each state, but there are free states and there are states that are less free.
Illinois' governor removed mask mandates on public transportation, but said local municipalities.
And Wednesday, the mask mandate was back. What happened in Milwaukee really could happen anywhere because the district is responding to a rise in cases. On Monday, Milwaukee Public Schools sent out this release right here. .5% of buildings tested positive. And right now, apparently, only one school in the district actually meets that threshold. So now parents are questioning if the district is even following its own guidelines. And
for thousands of migrants waiting for Title 42 to be lifted. The Department of Homeland Security predicts once the pandemic public health order is lifted, about 18,000 people Jordan, in a letter, is asking that Secretary Mayorkas be prepared to discuss data related to border encounters and gotaways, interior enforcement, and the Biden administration plan after Title.
Mariupol, the situation there getting worse by the hour. In fact, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky saying this morning his country does not have enough weapons to defend the city. The U.S. this morning also unveiling new sanctions.
Winds this morning, the chilling new images from two states under siege from Mother Nature right now as thousands of acres burn. That's next. and limit the ability to attack the fire from the air. We also have new information on the McBride fire burning near Ruidoso, New Mexico. These images show firefighters digging into the ground to expose and extinguish hot spots.
Police say cinematographer Helena Hutchins was shot and killed when actor Alec Baldwin fired what was supposed to be a prop gun. Actor Johnny Depp will be back on the stand this morning in the defamation trial against his ex-wife Amber Heard. Inside the building when the twister hit claim they tried to leave but were told by managers they would be fired if they left. This morning, the Ohio doctor accused of murdering 14 patients has been cleared of all charges.
All the criminal charges he faced.
My reaction is what an incredible moment, not just for William Husel, but, and let me pause there, for Dr. William Husel. It's a moment that he deserves, and
and they laid out the case very well in front of it. I was impressed.
What's next for Husel? There are some civil cases unresolved. Menashe said it is too soon to say if he will practice again.
In less than 3 hours from right now, the 15-year-old Michigan teen accused of killing 4 classmates last November.
Minneapolis Delta pilots protesting poor scheduling and tiring trips. Airlines across the industry short on staff as flight volumes increase post-pandemic, but Delta says it is playing by the rules. The union claiming Delta pilots
Big story today is continued mild temperatures. We'll have highs in the 50s in most towns this afternoon, but our next weather maker is right on our doorstep. Notice these clouds expanding across New England during the day, even some of these rain showers working through.
And some clouds up around Nashville and Birmingham as we have a little bit of shower activity across parts of Tennessee and up around parts of the Ohio River Valley, but around south of Atlanta, around Mobile and Pensacola, Jacksonville, some sun and clouds.
Between north and south these days. Throughout the month of April, we've been running cool through the Pacific Northwest. More 50s for Seattle and Spokane today versus nearly triple digits there out of southern Arizona. Look at the next weather.
Russian control, where they are restoring water, electricity, and medical services there. Right now, around 120,000 people do remain trapped in the port city of Mariupol, one of Russia's most strategic targets coming under.
Is no safe town. We understand that the Russian government is going to push ahead and going to destroy everything on its path. So what we're doing is to try
Cyber attacks in retaliation to sanctions. Germany reversing course on Russian energy, now saying it will stop importing oil from Russia by the end of the year. Germany does rely on Russia for 2/3 of distributing 20% less fertilizer than normal. The cost of buying food at the grocery store is rising faster than the cost of dining out. The National Desk's Angela Brown joining us right now. And Angela, really depending on
pricing when we're eating out is likely to go higher.
Matt Dimitrichin, Chief Investment Officer for the wealth management firm Telemus, says grocery stores can raise prices quicker than restaurants.
Grocers position to special counsel John Durham, who is looking into the Russia collusion investigation, which was based on questionable information that the Clinton campaign paid for. Former Clinton attorney Michael Sussman goes on trial next month, and he is accused of lying to the FBI.
This week, the city creeping closer to averaging one homicide a day. Baltimore's police union tweeting, there is an officer retention crisis. Uniform patrol is at half strength, and the investigative unit is depleted. Spots for crime. In Washington, I'm Ryan Smith for the National Desk.
Ahead this morning, the fight over mask mandates. Trial attorney Karen Conti breaking down the latest legal battles between a court and the Biden. Word on how the court could rule?
Well, the judge that issued the order issued it on a very narrow basis. So the DOJ wants to set a precedent. So it's going to be appealed to the 11th Circuit, which is the appellate court.
The doctor not guilty of overprescribing fentanyl to critically ill patients. What do you make of the jury's decision in this?
I was very surprised. I mean, this case
Really?
went on.
Why were you so surprised?
Well, because there was so usually a good sign for the defendant.
And I want to talk about what you just mentioned earlier when you talked about the prosecution and how many witnesses they brought with them, because the Franklin County prosecutor argued that Huesel helped to speed up his
that the defendant called was someone who said you cannot tie the deaths to the fentanyl. And the idea being these were terminally ill patients, they were going to die anyway, and you could not determine beyond a reasonable doubt that
Ohio due to inflation to questions over unnecessary speed bumps in California. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start with New York police adapting their methods to now legal marijuana use.
In the first 4 months of 2022, more than 2,000 animals have come through Cincinnati Animal Care.
The common theory is that it's dogs being returned
when a car bottoms out. What makes this street different, it has 3 sets of speed bumps. One homeowner who didn't want to talk on camera says the speed bumps ended racing down Chestnut.
But with the loss of subscribers, it's now higher on the company's radar. While you may have to get your own password and pay up soon, you may also get more options. To gain back subscribers, Netflix says it intends to add less expensive
That's alone when it comes to conclusively diagnosing genetic abnormalities. Marijuana may be becoming more legal and common, but it is posing a risk to pets. A new study found more pets are being poisoned by marijuana plants. Good morning. It's Thursday, April 21st. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Jan Jeffcoat, and here's what's impacting America. The Justice Department filing an appeal
on this evening, but not a major storm system. There'll be some wet weather out there for your evening plans. The sun will return on Friday.
I'm meteorologist Jasmine Lomax with a look at the Mid-Atlantic region.
Midwest. We've got pockets of rain across the area today, but temperatures running pretty close to normal for a lot of us. A little cooler there to the far north. Bismarck only getting to 43 for the high today. Keeping our eye on a chance for some thunderstorms as we head into your
Francisco in the Golden State, where it is indeed very welcome. And that's the scene from here.
Sources on the brush itself.
This morning, the problem's piling up with just weeks until the end of Title 42, unless it's delayed. Then inside America's crime surge.
Our city is in crisis.
public transportation. As many Americans embrace this mask-free travel world, a new AP poll shows also there's a big majority who are hesitant. 56% favor making masks mandatory for travel.
Required to wear masks, and there is a lot at stake in this appeal. If it is denied, the decision could jeopardize the CDC's authority to issue future mask orders in response to new strains of the virus, and it could create a
again. The airlines say the decision will be made on a case-by-case basis. Now, as for the future of mask mandates, as it's played out in court, New York travelers right now in a big state of confusion. Governor Kathy Hochul says the mask mandate is still in.
Americans surveyed say it's too early to end the mandate on planes and other transportation, and then 43% think that it's the right time, too late, or never should have happened at all. The rest of them are undecided. We had a photographer out at Reagan Airport yesterday. A lot of people still wearing them.
Yeah, we've seen that too in a lot of airports. Scott, thanks so much. Mask mandates have ended in almost every school district, but this morning one district is now reversing course.
Come out of school and they go to the store, they go to a sporting event. There were 17,000 people last night at the Bucks game without masks, and they see this and then they have to
Reversal reckless. The American people also concerned. More than half, in fact 60%, disapprove of Biden's handling of immigration. And if that rollback does happen, border agencies could end up in major trouble.
Agents say with so much of the border left unpatrolled, an influx of drugs is entering the country, sharing photos like this.
This entire debate is expected to come to a head next week on Capitol Hill.
Vote in a matter of hours could upend how Walt Disney Resort in Orlando operates. The Florida House will discuss stripping Disney of its self-governing powers. The state Senate did approve that measure yesterday, and if it does pass, this could set up a court battle over President Biden's handling of this war. 54% feel Biden has not been tough enough in his response to Russia's invasion. 36% think his approach is just right. 8% feel he's been too tough. A 911 call.
Raging this morning near Flagstaff, Arizona. The tunnel fire, as it's called, tripling in size from this time yesterday, now at almost 20,000 acres. 25 buildings have burned so far.
nationwide. Firefighters say experienced employees are resigning and newcomers are picking state and city agencies offering better pay and benefits. And new this morning, NFL quarterback Dwayne Haskins was looking for gas when he was told that she's a survivor of abuse. She is countersuing for $100 million.
Ms. Heard, in her frustration and in her rage and her anger, she would strike out. She would
A courtroom full of spectators and emotion. William Husel learned his fate, a jury of 12, finding him not guilty of murder or a lesser offense of attempted murder for all 14 of them, except the verdict. It's been a long road. Our first reports aired in January 2019. Jurors were selected in February 2022, and jurors began deliberating last.
Delta pilot picket, the demand they're making of the airline ahead of the travel summer surge.
Good news, bad news for home buyers this morning. If you are in the market, there are now fewer a year ago, and applications to refinance an existing mortgage have plunged 68% in the same time. That is because the average interest rate for a traditional 30-year loan is now around 5.
Volumes increased post-pandemic, but Delta says it is playing by the rules. The union claiming Delta pilots flying record amounts of overtime at this point. Delta says the pilots picketing are off duty, so the protest will
across parts of the region. And then by the afternoon, still we're looking at a few showers, but things start to break up and clear as we head into the night. A cold front will then move across the region on Friday, and that will lead to cooler temperatures.
Saturday, things are heating up for us, but look at that snow starting to move in to the western Dakotas.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Going to be another hot and humid day today.
in that besieged city, but saying that he does want to keep the city blocked so that, quote, not even a fly can get through Russian lines. Ukraine is denying that Mariupol has fallen to Russia this morning. We just verified these new grim images. Russia claims it can carry multiple nuclear warheads and that it has a range of more than 6,000 miles, potentially putting the U.S. within striking distance. I want to take you live to the White House this morning, where the Biden administration is vowing to send more help.
A court forced the Biden administration to restart new leases for oil drilling on federal lands, but the administration is not supporting the ruling.
President Biden remains absolutely committed to not moving.
Well, as the one later tonight, that one's going to be in Washington State. So remember, there's $1 trillion purse involved here. That's that infrastructure law, the resources there that the president can pull from. And I say they.
Than normal. The cost of buying food at the grocery store rising faster than the cost of dining out. The National Desk's Angela Brown joining us right now. And Angela, depending on where you go, it could be cheaper to eat out.
Takeout and restaurant meals up 6.9%.
I think it tells us that the pricing when we're eating out is likely to go higher.
Matt Dimitrichin, Chief Investment Officer for the wealth management firm Telemus,
filed their requests in opposition to special counsel John Durham, who is looking into the Russia collusion investigation, which was based on questionable information that the Clinton campaign paid for. Former Clinton attorney Michael Sussman goes on trial next month, accused of lying.
100th homicide this week, the city creeping closer to averaging one homicide a day. Baltimore's police union tweeting, there is an officer retention crisis. Uniform patrol is at half strength, and the investigative unit cameras outside. Of course, many of these places known to be hotspots for crime. In Washington, I'm Ryan Smith for the National Desk.
Ahead this morning, college flip-flopping on mask mandates as
benefits as long as they are unable to work because of COVID. The state's sick leave law differs in that it provides employees with up to 1 week of paid time off if they get COVID or if they need to care for a family member with COVID.
He said that is up to them, implying that this is a personal decision. That is the core of the issue here. That's the core of this conversation, that this should be a personal decision. At my school, well, that's precisely right. During our 8 days of being mask optional, I was completely in line with the policy, as were many of my peers, by foregoing our masks.
Ezra, what's your response to someone who says that? What's your response to those on the other side of this argument?
So I understand the intentions there, but I would understand this a lot more if that were March of 2020, when there was a lot more uncertainty.
Themselves, and while the news sparked literal cheers of joy for some passengers, others not so much. Here at PBIA, though, this morning we are seeing more passengers with their masks. Person next to you, there's a good chance they could or couldn't be wearing their mask. Back to you.
We'll have to get used to. Kara Duffy, thank you very much. Tennessee inmate Oscar Smith is waking up for what may be the final time
Scientific ways of thinking. Marijuana may be becoming more legal and common, but it's posing a risk to pets. A new study found more pets are being poisoned by marijuana plants and edibles than in the past. Most recover. The study did find, though, that legislation yesterday. Governor Ron DeSantis pushing for the bill after Disney took a public stance against the Parental Rights Act. And before we close out this hour, here's a final look at America's news and weather now, where you live.
Southeast temperature highs for the day. Looks like we're seeing mid-upper 70s around Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham about 82 degrees. Looking at Tampa, 86, 79 in West Palm. Slightly cooler in the southeast as the front has pushed through, but we're seeing breezes.
as well. Next big weather maker, cold front brings showers and storms all the way from Arkansas down into Texas and into Louisiana over the weekend. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia, and that is a look at your
The National Desk, America's News Now.
Crisis. And the Mouse House heads to the State House.
They're used to having their way, and they're not used to having people that will stand in their way.
Florida making moves against Disney. The crucial vote It. We do have live team coverage as you start your morning with us. National Desk, Scott Thuman taking a look at the balance between science and politics. But we begin with Kale Thompson standing by at the live desk with a closer look at that appeal to bring
of the Florida judge's decision. If that happened, it could immediately reimpose the mask mandate on public transit, which of course would be a huge change once again for travelers. I want to give you a live look here at Reagan National Airport outside D.C.
That the airlines have decided not to do it anymore.
Our team of local journalists saw face masks required signs going back up at Albany International Airport. The challenge to reinstate the mask mandate.
Should there be masks on planes?
A lot of passengers are going to decide that they'd rather keep the masks on anyway, and that's up to them, and certainly a choice to be respected.
Seeing some of that right now. Of course, you're right to
Tuesday, students and staff, they could go to school without wearing a mask. Then on Wednesday, the mask mandate was back. What happened in Milwaukee could really happen anywhere. That's because the district is responding to the mask mandate if 1.5% of buildings tested positive. Right now, according to them, only one school in the district actually meets that threshold. So now parents are questioning if the district is following
Mexico. Tent camps for thousands of migrants waiting for Title 42 to be lifted. The Department of Homeland Security predicts once the pandemic public health order is lifted, Gordon, in a letter, is asking that Secretary Mayorkas be prepared to discuss data related to border encounters and gotaways, interior enforcement, and the Biden administration plan after Title 42
Breaking developments unfolding on this 57th day of war. Russian President Vladimir Putin reportedly telling his forces to block, not storm, the last Ukrainian holdout in Mariupol. The situation there getting worse by the hour.
And other social safety net support, that kind of stuff. Lower consumer sales and economic activity, which would, of course, cause certain companies to struggle. Probably some bankruptcies in there, too, in some harder hit sectors. We'd also see less seen things, less innovation, less mobility. People are worried about changing jobs or moving or starting new businesses. So that would slow down, too. And, of course, we'd see a stock market correction. Now, that said, we wouldn't expect this to be a total crisis, like we've seen, but it certainly wouldn't be good for a lot of folks.
And what's really interesting, Scott, is we're now seeing inflation impact Americans returning to work. Just take a look at this article, this New York Times article. With inflation, workers are facing a return to office sticker shock. The cost of a daily routine, travel, coffee, food is far pricier than it was when offices shut down 2 years ago. We thought it was getting crazy, during the pandemic when everything was shut down, and now it's way worse. So what type of chain effect is inflation having really across the board, even when it comes to the jobs market?
You see two things here. First is, look, you have more expenses and higher costs. That means lower real wages. So your paycheck might be a little bigger, but it doesn't feel that way because you're spending more, not only on groceries and stuff, but on just getting to the office and your daily coffees. But you're also seeing, I think, something very interesting in more demands for remote work options. So the latest Fed Beige Book said that job seekers out there are increasingly demanding remote work options, in part because of the pain of and cost of commuting and the rest of that. And firms that aren't offering remote work are struggling to find employees, losing sales and the rest. Now, what that means is that for companies that can't shift to remote work, like restaurants, for example, they're going to really struggle to find workers. They already are, but it'll be increasingly hard.
And I have to point out, too, that the president's own infrastructure law now is suffering from inflation. In fact, according to a new S&P Global report, construction costs, along with inflation, are rising at the fastest pace in decades, driven by higher commodity prices and supply chain disruptions. That threatens to undercut some of the benefits of the bipartisan infrastructure law. Really was a centerpiece of the Biden administration's economic agenda. I mean, even the president's own agenda is suffering, obviously, because of inflation right now. But specifically, when you think about housing prices and the cost of building a new home, and you think about how much it's costing right now just to get supplies in to build bridges and roads, I mean, this right here is a big problem for the administration.
No matter where you look, whether it's the producer price index or related data, everything shows skyrocketing construction materials costs, which of course makes building stuff more expensive, whether it's homes or infrastructure. And that infrastructure dollars that we taxpayers have put out, they won't go as far as they used to. Now, again, some of this is out of President Biden's control. It's the Fed, it's supply chains and the rest. But I think the really frustrating thing here is that there are levers the president can pull. Removing tariffs, for example, on steel or concrete or other construction materials, speeding up visa processing for immigrant workers and so on. And he's not pulling those levers at all. And even worse, in some areas like new Buy American mandates or prevailing wage rules or environmental permitting, his administration's actually making things even more expensive. So that not only imperils infrastructure projects, but it also increases the chances of the dreaded stagflation, where we have really low economic growth, but still really high costs.
All right, very quickly, Scott, when are we going to get out of this? What's it going to take?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball next to me, but it does look like things will be getting better in the fall. But we still, like I've said before, the Fed has a very, very tiny needle to thread, because we're going to try to slow the economy down without going into a full-blown recession. Now, when you have Russia and now lockdowns in China, it's just impossible to predict how this is all going to play out. I'm optimistic that the Fed can thread that needle, but it's going to be pretty darn tough.
Scott Lincecum, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
Hours for a Texas inmate set to become the oldest inmate put to death in Texas, all as a court grants another man a brief stay of execution. Both of those stories next here in 90 seconds. Want to give you a live look over San Antonio this morning. Texas is preparing to execute a man at 7 o'clock tonight who will become the oldest man put to death in the state. Carl Wayne Buntian was convicted of killing a Houston police officer 30 years ago. Pending any last-minute appeals today, at age 78, he will become the oldest person to be executed in Texas since the Supreme Court lifted its ban on capital punishment back in 1976. Also developing this morning, a temporary stay of execution for a man on death row in South Carolina. The state Supreme Court has temporarily stopped the upcoming execution of Richard Moore, who chose death by firing squad over the electric chair. Moore's attorneys asked for the stay pending another case in South Carolina that is currently challenging the constitutionality of its execution methods.
New this morning, NFL quarterback Dwayne Haskins was looking for gas when he was struck and killed by a dump truck on a South Florida highway earlier this month. In a newly released 911 call, his wife called from Pittsburgh saying Haskins was stranded and that they got cut off while on the phone together. She wanted police to check on him. Actor Johnny Depp's going to be back on the stand this morning in the defamation trial against his ex-wife Amber Heard. Depp is suing Heard for $50 million after she wrote in an article that she is a survivor of abuse. She is countersuing for $100 million.
Miss Heard, in her frustration and in her rage and her anger, she would strike out. She would. It could begin with a slap. It could begin with a shove. It could begin with, throwing a TV remote at my head. It could be throwing a glass of wine in my face.
Depp drew parallels between Heard and his mother, who he says also abused him as a child. Ahead this morning, cheaper to go out to eat. Prices at the store rising faster than at restaurants. We're going to break this down for you coming up next. And also, Russian forces changing tactics. The new orders President Putin is giving troops in a major Ukrainian city. First, though, here's an update on America's news and weather where you live.
Good Thursday morning. I'm meteorologist Matt Honig with a look at the Northeast. The big story today is continued mild temperatures. We'll have highs in the 50s in most towns this afternoon, but our next weather maker is right on our doorstep. Notice these clouds expanding across New England during the day, even some of these rain showers working through New York and New Jersey. Some of these will move into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine later on this evening, but not a major storm system. There'll be some wet weather out there for your evening plans. The sun will return on Friday.
I'm meteorologist Jasmine Lomax with a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We'll start the morning with a few showers developing across parts of the region. And then by the afternoon, still we're looking at a few showers, but things start to break up and clear as we head into the night. A cold front will then move across the region on Friday, and that will lead to cooler temperatures on Saturday. This afternoon, we'll reach the 50s and the 60s before cooling down as we head into the night.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed. Here's a look at your southeast temperature highs for the day. Looks like we're seeing mid-upper 70s around Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham about 82 degrees. Looking at Tampa, 86, 79 in West Palm. Slightly cooler in the southeast as the front has pushed through. But we're seeing breezy conditions and some clouds up around Nashville and Birmingham as we have a little bit of shower activity across parts of Tennessee and up around parts of the Ohio River Valley. But around south of Atlanta, around Mobile and Pensacola, Jacksonville, some sun and clouds.
Well, a very good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael taking a look at your weather story across the Midwest. We've got pockets of rain across the area today, but temperatures running pretty close to normal for a lot of us. A little cooler there to the far north. Bismarck only getting to 43 for the high today. Keeping our eye on a chance for some thunderstorms as we head into your Friday across the plains and into Illinois, southern Wisconsin. By the time that we get to your Saturday, things are heating up for us, but look at that snow starting to move in to the western Dakotas.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Going to be another hot and humid day today. Winds will be blowing out of the south and southeast. That's going to bring Gulf moisture all the way back up into Oklahoma and above normal temperatures for the region as well. Next big weather maker, cold front, brings showers and storms all the way from Arkansas down into Texas and into Louisiana over the weekend. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia, and that is a look at your regional weather.
Well, hey, everybody, and a happy Thursday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, a real difference between north and south these days. Throughout the month of April, we've been running cool through the Pacific Northwest. More 50s for Seattle and Spokane today versus nearly triple digits there out of southern Arizona. Look at the next weather maker. Loads of rain making a comeback for the West Coast, including for San Francisco and the Golden State, where it is indeed very welcome. And that's the scene from here.
Live from the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Jay and Jeff Cohn, and it's Thursday, April 21st. Right now, hope is growing for the safe passage of thousands of Ukrainians trapped in war zones. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky now saying Ukraine liberated nearly 1,000 settlements from Russian control, where they are restoring water, electricity, and medical services. In fact, right now, around 120,000 people remain trapped, though, in the port city of Mariupol, one of Russia's most strategic targets, coming under constant bombardment. Kale Thompson joining us from the live desk. And Kale, you were learning of Russia's new orders for Mariupol, right?
Yeah, good morning, Jan. Breaking as we come on the air here, Russian President Vladimir Putin ordering his troops not to storm the last Ukrainian stronghold in that city, instead telling his troops to keep the city blocked so that, quote, not even a fly can get through. Ukraine is denying that Mariupol has fallen to Russia this morning. We also just verified these new grim images showing the aftermath of attacks here in Mariupol. Ukraine's President Zelensky saying overnight that thousands are still trapped there and in desperate need for help.
They are keeping 120,000 people in besieged Mariupol. Crimes that are happening there are far more scary and in larger scale than in Borodianka.
Can also verify this hour that Russian forces in the Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine have taken over the towns of Robizna and Kremina. The head of the Luhansk military describing the horrific reality of what his troops are facing there.
There is no safe town. We understand that the Russian government is going to push ahead and going to destroy everything on its path. So what we're doing is to try and to evacuate as many people as possible.
Russia also just releasing this new video overnight of an intercontinental ballistic missile test nicknamed the Satan II. Russia claims that it can carry multiple nuclear warheads and that it has a range of more than 6,000 miles, potentially putting the U.S. within striking distance. Take you live out to the White House this morning, where the Biden administration is vowing to send more help to Ukraine this morning. The White House press secretary saying the U.S. is preparing another $800 million military assistance package. The Biden administration also just unveiling a new round of sanctions against Russia, targeting a bank, cryptocurrency, and 40 people tied to one of Russia's oligarchs. The State Department is also now restricting the visas of 635 Russians involved in suppressing dissent.
Germany reversing course on Russian energy, now saying it will stop importing oil from Russia by the end of the year. Germany relies on Russia for 2/3 of its natural gas and 1/3 of its oil, so it's not clear if more European Union countries will follow this lead. But there are now concerns growing about a natural gas crisis. The cleanest burning fossil fuel is in short supply around the world, driving U.S. prices up 86% so far this year. A court forced the Biden administration to restart new leases for oil drilling on federal lands, but the administration is not supporting the ruling.
President Biden remains absolutely committed to not moving forward with additional drilling on public lands. The challenge that we faced was that we had a court that ordered that a new lease to be done.
And the White House climate advisor says the Department of Energy had no choice but to follow the court ruling, but still found ways to reduce the size of the leasing. President Biden is hitting the road again today to both collect some cash and spend some as well. Chief political correspondent Scott Thuman joining us from Capitol Hill to explain. All right, Scott, where's he headed? What's the focus of this trip?
Yeah, Jan, he's headed out west, and the plan is infrastructure. That is by far the biggest push this month for the administration when you talk about this sort of thing. They want to show results. And they want to be able to point to things and say to people, hey, look, we're making a real difference. So today, President Biden's going out to Portland, Oregon, where he's going to talk about runway improvements there at the main airport, ensuring that that particular runway is earthquake resilient. That allows for more stability when you know that cargo can come and go easily without disruption. Now, at that airport there, he's going to highlight what he would consider to be one of the big benefits of the bipartisan infrastructure law, and that is this type of spending. And then he's got a fundraiser tomorrow. He'll be doing the same in Washington State. But remember, that's $1 trillion purse that they get to pull from. And I say they, Jan, because a half dozen or so other White House cabinet officials and members have been all over the country this month, really using April as a chance to highlight infrastructure projects that are either underway or that are about to begin.
Yeah, and this is not the only reason for this kind of trip, right?
No, not at all. Look, politics is always at play here. So the secondary goal of all of this is to win voters back. The president's poll numbers, as you know, hovering at some really low benchmarks right now, around 36 to 40% approval rating in some surveys. He wants to convince people not to give up on Democrats and give the party a better chance this fall with midterms quickly approaching. But that does require some showmanship, a lot of sales, and convincing. So arm twisting is definitely high on the priority list this week.
It sure is. Great to see you, Scott. Thanks for joining us this morning.
You got it.
We're also following growing concerns about a global food shortage. Georgia Representative Austin Scott says developing nations could face starvation, partly because of the war in Ukraine and also because U.S. railroad companies are now distributing 20% less fertilizer than normal. As we know, the cost of buying food at the grocery store is rising faster than the cost of dining out in many cases. The National Desk's Angela Brown joining us right now. And really, Angela, as we know, depending on where you go, it could be cheaper just to eat out.
Yeah, and in some cases, you may want to hit that dollar menu, but also the prices even at some of those discount dollar chains are going up as well, discount for food. Just think about it, though. The cost of meat, up 13%. Both restaurants and home chefs are paying more. But experts are saying the difference between like a grocery store and your favorite restaurant is that a grocery store can raise prices faster. It doesn't matter if you're a home chef.
The produce, I thought it was higher. Yeah, our drinks, they're higher.
Or a professional pizza maker, the cost of food is busting budgets.
A lot of restaurants have been just hemorrhaging money for, 2 years almost.
Right now, the price of preparing meals at home is climbing faster than dining out. The April report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics says home food costs up 10% from last year, while the average cost of takeout in restaurant meals up 6.9%.
I think it tells us that the pricing when we're eating out is likely to go higher.
Matt Dimitrichin, Chief Investment Officer for the wealth management firm Telemus, says grocery stores can raise prices quicker than restaurants.
Grocers can pass it on real time. That case of goods is a little higher. I'm going to change my price more immediately. If you're a restaurant, you tend to set your menu prices 2, 3, 4 times a year.
But if you've been to a restaurant, you know dining out is costing more. A restaurant tracking publication says limited service meals sold at places like fast food restaurants rose 8% year over year, while full service menu prices grew just a little less than that.
With the fuel prices going up, so freight is going up, and some things we can't even get. Chicken is through the roof, especially wings, and so we're having to raise our prices to compensate for that.
And restaurant prices are up, but experts predict we could see another increase this spring.
Thank you, Angela. The surge in violent crime hitting nearly every corner of the country. The National Desk's Ryan Smith tracking the dangerous trend and what critics have to say.
More than a dozen cities across the country now coming off of a record-breaking year for homicides, many of them now on track to surpass records set the previous year. Police, residents, and advocates all scrambling to address these violent crime spikes.
From Durham, North Carolina,
our city is in crisis. And gun violence is taking the lives of far too many of our residents.
To the city of Baltimore.
Violent crime seems to be out of control.
Several major American cities now grappling with a crime crisis.
It's all around. The answer is there have got to be accountability for people, not only who commit acts of violence, but also who contribute to the disorder in the city in a variety of other ways.
Baltimore hit its 100th homicide this week, the city creeping closer to averaging one homicide a day. Baltimore's police union tweeting, there is an officer retention crisis. Uniform patrol is at half strength, and the investigative unit is depleted as well. New Orleans city leaders warning gun homicides increased 81% statewide over the last decade.
In the city of New Orleans, and we are in the midst of a crisis, as we can all see.
Brazen robberies and thefts have gotten so bad in Seattle, businesses are now hiring firms to train workers how to defuse volatile situations.
We receive a report of a broken window or a break-in every other week across our restaurant portfolio, and that's new. That didn't exist pre-pandemic.
Former Baltimore Police Deputy Commissioner Jason Johnson says reversing America's crime crisis comes down to beefing up resources.
We've got to restore the dignity of law enforcement, empower police officers and law enforcement officers, whether they're police or prosecutors, to actually do their jobs.
And just past Wednesday, city leaders in Houston announcing a new plan to put some of that pressure on private businesses, requiring all bars, nightclubs, and convenience stores to install security cameras outside. Of course, many of these places known to be hotspots for crime. In Washington, I'm Ryan Smith for the National Desk.
Ahead this morning, the border crisis and Florida's showdown with Disney. Florida Congressman Byron Donalds breaking down the big issues about to play out. The Florida Senate has voted to strip Disney of some of its special self-governing status granted 50 years ago after the company continues speaking out against Florida's parental education rights bill. Joining us right now, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds. Congressman Donalds, good morning to you. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be back.
This bill would dismantle the Reedy Creek Improvement District that essentially grants Disney these governing powers. So, Congressman Donalds, talk us through this. What would this mean for Disney and also for the local jurisdictions in Florida where Disney owes a lot of money? They owe, in fact, $1 billion to 2 counties, right? They're in debt.
That is correct. What it will do is it means that Disney, for any other improvements, will actually have to deal directly with these local governments. They won't be allowed to just do that on their own. Some of those dollars that they do owe have to go back But listen, what's really happened here is that Disney Corporation got involved in a political issue that has nothing to do with them. This is something where Florida's governor and a legislature did the right thing to protect children in Florida public schools. And unfortunately, Disney decided to listen to the propaganda from people who did not read the bill and do not care about what the bill actually says. They got involved in a fight and they were wrong. And it caused members to actually start taking a look at the special treatment Disney has been afforded for 50 years in Florida. And that they're basically saying that if you find fault with how we run the state, then you don't need special privileges from the state.
Right. And I want you to tell our audience very quickly, you said that they did not read the bill. They got it wrong. So tell us specifically in the bill, what is the problem with the way it's being narrated versus what you say is actually in the bill?
The problem about what's being put out there is that somehow the legislature said that you can't say gay in the state of Florida. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Listen, I'm in the state of Florida right now. Obviously, you can do that. What the bill expressly says is that teachers cannot engage in conversations with children under the age of 9 with conversations of sexual orientation and gender identity. That's simple stuff. I have 3 sons. I wouldn't want a teacher talking to my sons about their gender identity. I'm quite sure my mother would never want any teacher talking to me about my gender identity when I was in the 3rd grade. That's what the bill does. That is the scope. Unfortunately, groups like Equality Florida, who are on the left side of our politics, decided to propagandize on the bill, put out false statements talking about don't say gay, and people, instead of reading the legislation, took the talking points. But we've already seen the polling. Even Democrats approve of the bill when they know exactly what's in the bill. So this is why Disney's wrong. This is why people in the White House are wrong. And anybody who continues this propaganda about what Florida has done, instead of actually reading the legislation, they're going to be wrong too.
I want you to listen to what Florida Democratic State Senator Lorraine Osley reacted to this, saying, quote, "This is not about meaningful legislative review. This is punishment. It is political theater, and we are better than this." What's your thoughts when you see one of your state senators say something like that?
My thought is that Disney has a special exemption in law that no other organization has. They've had it for 50 years. And if you're going to engage in stuff like this, but you're getting special treatment, then it's going to get reviewed. It's just that simple.
All right, and let's talk about the border situation, because as we know, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have shared their concerns about Title 42 being lifted, and now we're hearing reports the Biden administration could delay lifting it. What's the latest you're hearing about Title 42 on the Hill, and specifically in your state? What would happen if it was repealed?
Well, listen, Title 42 will affect everybody in the United States because of the way Joe Biden and the Democrats are managing the border. They're not just processing people and holding them in facilities on the southern border, which would be bad enough. They're processing people into the United States and then distributing them all through the United States in every community across the country. That's what's happening there. So what's happened is you have Democrat senators who are vulnerable in the midterm elections who are pushing back. That's what's causing Joe Biden to hesitate and to pause. If they weren't concerned about what voters are going to do in November, they would have gotten rid of Title 42. We would have seen a 50% increase in illegal entrance into the United States, and Joe Biden wouldn't bat an eye.
Congressman, I spoke with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton yesterday. He said it makes no sense that the same administration whose DOJ wants to reinstitute the mask mandate on public transportation would then also allow anyone in this country who is not a U.S. citizen come in without a mask, without a vaccine. Congressman, you've been calling for these mask mandates to be lifted. What do you make right now of the CDC insisting masks on transportation are still necessary?
The CDC has been playing with this the entire time. The data is clear that air travel is not a vector of transmission for COVID-19. If flying on planes, something which I do all the time, was a vector of transmission for COVID-19, we would have seen it long before now. It is simply not happening there. Excuse me. So for the CDC to continue down this road of just kicking the can down, continuing the mandates with no data, no science to release, supporting it is a joke. That's why the federal judge stepped in. The CDC is way past their boundaries here, but they've been wanting to continue this because it's become politics, not science.
Congressman Byron Donald, it's always great to see you. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday. Hope you have a great weekend.
Anytime.
We'll be right back.
All right, breaking here at the live desk. We just got our hands here on the weekly jobless claims. 184,000 people filed for unemployment last week, down slightly from the week before, but also slightly higher than what analysts were expecting, though not by much. Jobless claims are seen as a proxy for layoffs. Fewer filings are a sign that companies are holding on to employees despite higher costs with inflation here in the last few months. Employers are also just really trying to keep the employees they have with so many open jobs right now.
This is the National Desk, America's News Now. Our team of nearly 4,000 local journalists bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. From animals abandoned in Ohio due to inflation to questions over unnecessary speed bumps in California. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start with New York police adapting their methods to now legal marijuana use.
It's now legal to walk down the street in New York State smoking weed.
It's a different aroma on the streets in downtown Saratoga.
It's something the officers in the Saratoga Springs Police Department had to adapt to.
And our officers came around with that.
The legislation is not as clear-cut as with alcohol. There's no well-known level like 0.08 blood alcohol content. When it comes to impaired driving,
we're going to look for their speech patterns, how their eyes are moving or what their eyes look like.
We rely quite a bit more on drug recognition experts.
There's no tool that they know of yet to help them test for THC levels. Saratoga Springs Public Safety is looking at ways to safely move forward as dispensaries open and marijuana sales expand across the state.
So we're going to need to have additional enforcement mechanisms, more police officers out on the street to make sure that marijuana sales don't happen as street transactions.
From stray dogs and cats to, yes, a pair of roosters. In the first 4 months of 2022, more than 2,000 animals have come through Cincinnati Animal Care.
The common theory is that it's dogs being returned after everybody rushed out to get pets during the pandemic. That's just not what we're seeing.
However, one pandemic effect keeping the shelter at capacity could be tied to rising inflation across our nation.
Anytime that there's economic uncertainty, we start to see animal shelters start to fill up.
SPCA leaders say they've seen an 18% increase in emissions compared to the first 4 months of last year. During the pandemic, they pushed fostering instead of adoption.
That gets the dogs and cats out of the facility, into a home, kind of get a feel for, is a dog or a cat right for you?
Animal Care also has a huge fostering program with 700 volunteers. But these animals are in need of forever homes now.
One family has captured lots of vehicles on its doorbell camera going too fast over the speed bumps. At night, you can see sparks fly when a car bottoms out. What makes this street different, it has 3 sets of speed bumps. One homeowner who didn't want to talk on camera says the speed bumps ended racing down Chestnut. There have been slow speed chases down the street, 4 patrol cars in pursuit. City of Fresno says the speed bumps were installed before 1997. That's how far records go back, so there's no reason listed for them being placed on the street. It seems trucks do better moving too fast over the speed bumps than little cars. Remember, it's 10 miles an hour over speed bumps.
That'll leave a mark. Netflix is cracking down on passwords as they try to boost their total number of customers. We'll have a look at where things stand after the company lost millions yesterday on Wall Street after the break. Give you a live look here over the San Francisco Bay Area, headquarters for Netflix. Company shares down more than 3% with just over half an hour before the opening bell on Wall Street. That is on top of the 35% plunge we saw Wednesday after the company revealed it had lost 200,000 subscribers in just 3 months. Netflix trying to stem that tide this morning, announcing plans to crack down on password sharing, something it estimates 130 million households are doing right now. Netflix did not stop it before because the company was doing fine, but with the loss of subscribers, it's now higher on the company's radar. While you may have to get your own password and pay up soon, you may get more options. To gain back subscribers, Netflix says it intends to add less expensive plans to catch those plans. The catch, though, with those plans is that they may come with ads. Here's a look at news and weather where you live.
Good Thursday morning. I'm meteorologist Matt Honig with a look at the Northeast. The big story today is continued mild temperatures. We'll have highs in the 50s in most towns this afternoon, but our next weather maker is right on our doorstep. Notice these clouds expanding across New England during the day, even some of these rain showers working through New York and New Jersey. Some of these will move into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine later on this evening, but not a major storm system. There'll be some wet weather out there for your evening plans. The sun will return on Friday.
I'm meteorologist Jasmine Lomax with a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. We'll start the morning with a few showers developing across parts of the region, and then by the afternoon, still we're looking at a few showers, but things start to break up and clear as we head into the night. A cold front will then move across the region on Friday, and that will lead to cooler temperatures on Saturday. This afternoon, we'll reach the 50s and the 60s before cooling down as we head into the night.
I'm meteorologist Vitas Reed. Here's a look at your southeast temperature highs for the day. Looks like we're seeing mid-upper 70s around Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham about 82 degrees. Looking at Tampa, 86, 79 in West Palm. Slightly cooler in the southeast as the front has pushed through. But we're seeing breezy conditions and some clouds up around Nashville and Birmingham as we have a little bit of shower activity across parts of Tennessee and up around parts of the Ohio River Valley. But around south of Atlanta, around Mobile and Pensacola, Jacksonville, some sun and clouds.
Well, a very good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael taking a look at your weather story across the Midwest. We've got pockets of rain across the area today, but temperatures running pretty close to normal for a lot of us. A little cooler there to the far north. Bismarck only getting to 43 for the high today. Keeping our eye on a chance for some thunderstorms as we head into your Friday across the plains and into Illinois, southern Wisconsin. By the time that we get to your Saturday, things are heating up for us, but look at that snow starting to move in to the western Dakotas.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. Going to be another hot and humid day today. Winds will be blowing out of the south and southeast. That's going to bring Gulf moisture all the way back up into Oklahoma and above normal temperatures for the region as well. Next big weather maker, cold front, brings showers and storms all the way from Arkansas down into Texas and into Louisiana over the weekend. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia, and that is a look at your regional weather.
Well, hey, everybody, and a happy Thursday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, a real difference between north and south these days. Throughout the month of April, we've been running cool through the Pacific Northwest. More 50s for Seattle and Spokane today versus nearly triple digits there out of southern Arizona. Look at the next weather maker. Loads of rain making a comeback for the West Coast, including for San Francisco and the Golden State, where it is indeed very welcome. And that's the scene from here.